Well, good thing the Assetto Corsa Competizione loads so fast. All right, let's go back again. Okay, yeah, now you can see the mouse, I believe. Belgium. Hi, Cohen Cola. Power. All right, let's brake here. Okay, so as I said, I like to brake for this second turn somewhere after the 100 meters here, and usually I get as a very nice brake reference point this part, this piece of asphalt side road on the main straight. You can see it here, right? You can see the mouse. True. All right. So yes, I usually brake somewhere here. Now, the key with this very fast right-hander is that, as you can see, there is not much camber in here, right, at the outside of the turn, but then the road goes down on the mid inner part, on the right hand of the side of the road. So you can't see the mouse. Excellent. I thought you could see it, but turns out you can't. Let's see if I can fix that. Give me a second. Maybe I can fix that like this. Okay, let me know if now it's better. I will wait a little bit for the live stream to catch up and the chat. Sorry about that. Is better? Yes, it's better. Okay, so if you can see the mouse now, I will go back again a tiny bit. My pedals are going somewhere else. I don't know where. Hope I'm not losing completely the pedals. All right. Okay. All right. So as I said, this is more or less where I like to start my braking zone for this very fast right-hander. This piece of side road asphalt here, around at this point I start my braking zone. And as I was saying, this turn is very particular. If you can see here, the outside, the left part of the road has no backing at all. So if you stay and brake here, then you will probably end up very wide. But at the right-hand part of the road, you can see there's lots of banking. The road goes practically inclined towards the turn. So what I like to do is braking, and contrary to what you should properly do, I'm starting going towards the turn much sooner, like this, because I want to be inside the banking right here, even before the apex. If you are inside the banking like here, then you can, keep up much more speed than normally into this turn. If you find yourself out here, then you start sliding towards outside, and you cannot bring lots of speed into the turn. We will see about this on a fast lap right after we are finished with our circuit walk. All right, so I will try to stay as close to the inside curb as possible. Do not take the curb, because as you can see, it's a little bit, it's soft, but it's a little bit on the high side, so it will unbalance your car. Just, go, just touch it. Do not take the curb. I like to take this gear usually in third gear, second gear, depending on, but it is a turn that you can bring much more speed inside than normally. And if you do everything correctly, then you will end up outside, and you will still have plenty of grip so that you don't go completely wide outside here, but you are probably on top of this curve. All right? Okay, people still keep coming. Hello, everybody. Okay, so obviously after this turn, you move completely on the right side of the road across the other side. And if you are on a very fast lap time, around after this or in this orange jerseys here or whatever you want to call it, I don't know, you start going inside. It is a turn that you can't take flat out, so you can keep flat out here and try when you are more or less on the apex to not have too much understeer, so you are forced to turn a lot. You have to be with as small steering input as possible, because right after the apex, let me lower the sound a little bit of this monstrous engine because I can't even hear my thoughts. So right after the apex, you want to straighten your steering wheel, or just keep just a tiny amount of steering angle and brake as hard as you can for the next turn. And because this braking zone is short and a little bit turning, it's easy to unbalance the car. So as straight as possible, hard braking, and then you need to go as close to the wall as possible. Now, this turn is a little bit particular. I don't know, because of the very big camber of the road, quite a bit of inclination. Yeah, sorry guys about my voice. I will start to talk a little bit lower because I had the volume of the engine so high that I couldn't even hear myself. So yeah, sorry about that. I will start to talk lower, and I promise you, yes, I will get a professional microphone at some point. So, um, as I was saying, you need to get as close as possible to the goal here. Now, because of the inclination of the road and the big difference in going uphill of this turn, uh, I found that the front end can take more rotation of your steering wheel than you would usually use. I mean, I have always advised you guys to not rotate your steering wheel too much, because you're just going over the limit of the tires, and you're losing practically grip, so you're going into understeer. But in this particular turn, once you're in, all right, and you are, let's say, at this point of the turn, okay, and you feel the car going a tiny bit wide, you feel the car is going wide, and you're like this, give it some extra steering wheel angle. Give it some extra steering wheel angle. Normally the car would add the understeer, but because of all the camber of the road and the uphill and the load that the front tires get, they can still handle a little bit of extra slip angle because of the extreme load, and you can give it a tiny bit, not too much. I mean, don't do this, of course, okay? But you are like here, you can get some extra, I don't know, 10, 15 degrees, some extra degrees, and miraculously, the front end will still stay on the line. It will not go much more in, but it will not go outside in terminal understeer. So it will stay here. You have to see the road like that. You have to have the sensation that, oh my God, I'm gonna hit the inner wall, but believe me, you won't. So if you do everything correctly, then the car will go outside at this point. At this point, you want to, turn back with the steering wheel. You want to turn back, because if you keep it like this, then you're gonna have extra understeer, or the car will snap from the rear wheel spin, and you will go into some ugly oversteery, power oversteery situation. So you need to have your wheel like that, and when you are on the exit, always be ready to give some extra fast control, because it's easy to go into some power oversteer. So you're like this, just remind yourself that you must be ready from some fast feedback in power oversteer. Okay, great. Yeah, do not touch the wall. Now this one is completely flat out, no problems, but it pays again to, take care of the little details and make as wide racing line as possible and have as less steering wheel input as possible, because if you steer too much, there's no problem. The turn is easy, but because of the road, you going uphill, there is a bump, there is some camber changement, there's lots of different things going on with the road surface here. If you give it too much, then you're gonna get some wheel spin. Uh, right here, it will not unbalance your car. The wheel spin won't be a problem. It will not unbalance your car, but it will make your traction control engage, and this will, cut your forward acceleration. So as little steering angle as possible, and keep an eye and listen that your traction control does not engage. If the traction control engages in this turn, you're doing something wrong. All right? Okay. Yeah, don't drink and drive, but it's virtual, so no problem. All right, so we are. You have to stay really, really close to this wall now. You have to go with your left wheels over the white line. So if we're gonna look at our cars from the outside, you need to be as close to the wall as possible in a situation like this. Okay? So go back in again. You have to be like that. And if you do everything correctly, and there's grip on the road, so there's lots of rubber, and your tires are, pretty fresh, then you can take this turn pretty much flat out. But it's not always easy with all the cars, and it's not always easy in all conditions. So you either start turning at the tree here, so you are close or just by the tree, and you have to go in, and you can see here again we have lots of camber that goes towards the apex of the road. And you need to, once you have, arrived on the correct position and you have the correct racing line, after that you need to force a little bit the car with the steering wheel to stay on the line, because otherwise it would slide gradually to the outside. And at the outside, as you can see, there's a wall. Now if you have done everything correctly, you are either flat out or you have just made a slight, raise of your accelerator. So just, let go a little bit the accelerator, and you're through the turn. But you arrive at the turn quite wide. Sometimes you are even touching the curb, the outside curb, which means that if you hear the curb, you are really, really very, very close to the wall. Now, very important, again, when you are arriving at this outside the exit of this turn, you need to have as less steering wheel as possible. If you find yourself in a situation like this with lots of steering wheel, that means you are in big trouble, because you will either go understeer it towards the wall, or even if you won't get the wall, at some point you're gonna get the outside curb. The outside curb has lots of camber that will help your wheels to regain grip, and if you are like this, you're probably gonna have your nose going towards right and your rear end going in extremely snappy oversteer and against the wall again. So you're sliding, you are watching the wall coming towards you, but you have to control yourself and use as less steering wheel input as possible, because that's the safest way to get out of this turn. All right, moving ahead. All right, so the first turn here is flat out. Okay, the trick here is, while doing this turn flat out, I mean, the feeling you have is, okay, I will stay towards, the inside of the road, so I'm protected. But that is the worst possible situation to be in, because then you are going to have plenty of problems for the next turn. So even if it's flat out and you feel safe, you need to go a little bit outside your comfort zone and end up as wide as possible around here. You see there is a mark here. Now this mark says you have to turn in towards the next turn to the left. I don't remember the number of the turn, but remember this little mark, white mark on the road. If you see marks like that, we do not put them there. They are already on the real tracks, but they are there on the real tracks because of a reason. Real drivers, locals ask them, and they put them there. All right. So, what are you going to do for this next turn? The line is pretty much, unique. You don't have to think a lot about the line. Now, usually, personally, I find it easier for me, and if I have the correct setup and I feel the car properly, to enter flat out right at the apex of the turn, which is pretty much before the end of the curb. I just lift a tiny bit my accelerator, and by lifting, the front nose goes in, okay, and then instantly I go again flat out on the accelerator. This helps me to put the nose in and then slide slowly towards the outside, and again, if you do it properly, you are going to come very, very close to the wall. And so again, the advice is keep as little steering wheel as possible, because if you are in this situation, you're gonna hurt yourself at some point. So as little steering wheel as possible, move ahead. And now, here's the situation. Now, as you can see, this is completely blind. We can't see anything at all. Completely blind. But we have this Marshall, I don't know how to call it, box or whatever. Now we have the Marshall outside of that, but they are also inside there. Now, this is a great reference point, this one. When you are on top of the crest here and you're passing through this Marshall post, this is the time to start turning in for the next turn, and maybe raise your foot a little bit and come inside into this point. Now, be very careful, because this curve here is really, really very tricky. It's very tricky because, first of all, you are arriving here at a very high speed. This fourth or fifth gear, I don't remember right now, almost flat out turn, so it is really very high speed, and I'm sure that you saw in the real race that so many accidents happen into this turn. Now, if you're forced to raise your foot here because you feel that the car is sliding too wide, be very careful, because if you raise your foot when you are on top of this curb, you're gonna provoke lots of turn in and oversteer, and you are at a very high speed, which means that you're gonna make your diffuser, if you go into too much angle, you're gonna make your diffuser stall and your rear wing stall, while your front splitter still generates tons of downforce, which means you're gonna completely lose your rear end and end up into a spin. So if you really need to correct your line here, my advice is, instead you're like this in full accelerator. Instead of going like that, completely off, don't do it. From full acceleration, just go down to half or 70 or 6. Just what you need to feel that the front end starts going a little bit inside, but do not overdo it. If you let go a lot, it's, I won't say instant death, but it's pretty close. So yeah, be very careful on controlling and trying to change your line into this turn. All right, okay. So outside, and again, this is another curb that you need to be very careful. It seems that it is a very nice smooth curb, but it is very easy to end up like this. Okay, so which means that your right wheels are over the curb, and this is what happens. So if you are in that position and you are very fast, as you can see, I'm practically already touching. Okay, I'm scrubbing the ground. I'm touching the curb with the under tray of my car, almost not. But remember, right now I am stopped. When you are arriving here at full speed, the downforce makes your car lower, and the turning makes your car rolling towards the outside. So this part of the car is even lower, and for sure is going to touch the curb. And when the curb touches, when the car touches this curb, it's practically mathematical that you're going to spin or lose control. And again, there is not much space here. It seems that there is some space, but not really much space. And most importantly, you are at around, I don't know, 220, 230 kilometers per hour, 200 kilometers per hour, a lot, which means whatever the space, it's not enough to control the car if you go into a speed. So be very careful. Don't go over this curb. At worst case scenario, touch it, maybe go up a little bit, but that's it. After the curb, instantly, as fast as you can, go here on the left side of the road, and just before this news kind of billboard, okay, just before that, touch the brakes hard, but instantly release the brakes. Do not go over these curbs on the brakes, because if you do so, the front end, you're going so fast that the front end is going to jump just a tiny bit. You won't see it on the replay. It's not jumping. But it gets so light that even the ABS cannot control what's happening, and you're going to lock your wheels under braking if you keep braking after the crest. So with locked wheels, even the tiny bit of directionality that you have, you're gonna lost it completely, and you're gonna end up wide without possibility to brake, and crash on the walls, because as you can see, we have walls left and right. So hard brake right here, and just before going over the crest, right here, release the brakes completely. Now, if you are very good, you can keep just a tiny bit of braking and brake a little bit later. But while you're still learning hard brakes, release the brakes completely and drive the car with the steering wheel, going complete coasting, okay, and drive the car with the steering wheel. You need to go close to this wall, and after you are over this wall here, this apex, let's say, then you can start braking again. uh, Still, be careful. It's better to modulate braking here, because as you can see, there is a very steep downhill. The road has camber here, not camber here, different grades of going downhill. So your wheels will not always have, actually they never have the correct amount of load correctly balanced left and right. So the ABS is gonna make your braking zone very, very long. So you have to modulate your braking so that you do not engage too much ABS in this situation. Is it all clear for you until now? Because this is the most difficult part right now. All right. With the Audi, it's so difficult and dangerous. Well, with all cars, but the Audi in particular is a little bit too much downforce on the front, especially with the Evo, which makes the car even more difficult to control in braking. I mean, the Audi usually likes to go, deep into the turn, make a V turn, rotate, and then go out straight. In this kind of turns that you need to keep a little bit of braking while you still rotating the car left and right, left and right, it really gets nasty. And you saw this also in the real race, where there were some Audis having some terrible accidents into this part of the race. So as we said, you need to get on top of the curb going down here. Again, modulate your braking. You cannot afford to go, full 100% braking here and, trust the ABS. You cannot trust the ABS into this kind of turns. Down the curb, and again, turning in here. Again, every time you have just a tiny portion of straight line while you're braking, hammer the brake at 100%, and then when you turn again, modulate the braking force as much as possible. Very light braking here, and now this is the situation. I don't have an exact reference point. Maybe it's this panel billboard here. Maybe we can check this better. But there is a point here that for now I'm going still by visual, navigation. There is a point where you really need to turn in to go as close to this wall as possible. And this turn in is not the geometric one. It is a little bit earlier, because if you turn it to the geometric, because of the extreme change in gradient of the road, you're gonna end up very wide. The trick here is to know and understand that you are going to understeer, and you are going to understeer a lot here, because practically there is a very hard left turn, and the road, you are on the road, and then you're not. You just, it's not a gradient. It's a step. The road under your wheels disappears. So you turn in, you're gonna hit the wall, but at some point your wheels are your front end is practically flying, all right? And so the car instantly moves towards the outside, and you make the turn properly. And so you need to be somewhere like here, like this, even if that normally would mean, I will go against the wall. But if you are arriving at speed, a steering wheel like this will, help you turn a little bit. Then you go up on the air, practically jumping. The car will jump a little bit to the right side, and then hopefully you're gonna end somewhere around here. And at this point, you can, straighten your steering wheel again. And the key here is, let me go a little bit backwards just to explain you. The key here is that when you are in this situation, you go flat out on the accelerator. I mean, the moment you feel the car that starts moving towards the outside because it is jumping, all right? It is flying practically. At that moment, you go hard on the accelerator, and you trust the car, like this, to move and arrive pretty much here. Now, if you have done everything correctly, you're gonna do all this part here flat out, right? Again, flat out. You need to stay as much on the left side as possible. Here we have another line. You can see this white line on the road. Now this is a good indication to start braking a little bit, or at least releasing the accelerator. Some people, I mean, it depends. Some people prefer to go flat out here, go inside, okay, and start braking again. We can see it here at this point, or a little bit before this white mark on the road. Now, this is another of those turns that honestly I don't know how to do, so I would advise you to go and check some much faster guys replays and videos on YouTube. There are plenty of them, so go check them and see how they approach this turn. Remember, they do this for a hot lap. So what they post usually on the forums is on the YouTube is a hot lap. For a race, you probably need to be much more conservative and not go full attack and brake as late. So there are two ways to do this turn. So as I said, you can start brake a little bit earlier or just release and then accelerate again to uh, balance the car around here, or brake very late here. But after that, again, you have two situations. There are people that prefer to stay outside here, brake as straight as possible, and then go in, okay? And there are people that prefer to brake more or less in a straight line like this, okay? This permits you to brake a little bit better, probably, and then go inside. Now, if you choose the first solution that you stay outline, then you can take a later apex on the turn and exit much faster, which is very, very important because, as you know, uh, what follows is a very, very long straight. So any speed that you gain at the exit of this turn is extremely important for the straight line that follows. If you find yourself here, the curb, sorry, the camber of the road does help you a little bit to stay close, okay, to the wall, but you have to be a little bit more patient. Uh, will probably accelerate a tiny bit later, but again, if that helps you to make the turn, maybe it's better. We're gonna try and see if we can, learn these one way or another and see what works better for us. Normally, I would, advise only one specific way, the correct way. But we are in a circuit where usually you have to do very long endurance races, and you have one wall on the left and one wall on the right, and probably another 50 crazy people like you trying to overtake you and trying to defend from you, and you are all, rumbling down the mountain together. So my advice in this situation is, in a race, since there's not a big difference between the two methods, try and use the method that you feel more safe for you and for the others, right? So usually I feel a little bit safer to brake in a straight line and stay close. Some other people prefer to go on the outside, and then it's fine. Do whatever you prefer. Just try to stay safe, because those goals do not forgive. All right. So as I said, exit with as much speed as possible, and very, very long straight. Very long straight here. Not much to say. Try to move slowly to the left side of the road. Now, here's something that everybody does. At some point, the road becomes a little bit wider. Take advantage of it. Go even more on the left side, okay? Because you're arriving at this point of the track with around 270 kilometers per hour, and you're still accelerating. And you really need to. Now, this part of the road is very bumpy. You go into this turn, which is flat out, but it is bumpy, and you feel the bumpiness. And it pays for you and for your performance to use as little steering wheel angle as possible, less rolling resistance on the tires, less upsetting of the car on the bumps, and so less engagement of the traction control. And in the end, you're gonna maybe gain 1, 2, 3 kilometers per hour before the braking zone. Every little thing counts. So you know uh, it's good to use as much of the road as possible. All right. So again, here you're gonna use again as little steering wheel angle as possible. Do not overdo it. So do not end up very, very wide at the left. Try to end up more or less at the middle of the road, because this is why we're taking advantage of the extra width of the road before the turn, so that at the exit we do not end up extremely wide, but more or less a tiny bit on the left side of the middle of the road. This will help you to be able to come back to the right again. Okay, braking is, I think, a little bit, I mean, between 150, 100, 100 meters, between 150 and 100 meters. Maybe we should find a better braking mark, because obviously those billboards can fly away from some other car. I will have a look later. I don't remember right now, so remind me to find a better braking mark for this part of the road. But the thing is here, you are arriving usually with any car at over 280 kilometers per hour, and you are downhill. So you need to brake a little bit sooner, and you need to be very careful, because at the end of this braking zone, this turn is pretty tricky. It seems easy. The turning is easy. It's easy to get into the turn, but after the apex, it's very easy to slide wide, because you see it gets even narrower. And if you end wide and over the curb, you're gonna lose so much speed. So be very careful at the exit, and after that, it's very easy, just flat out this part. Uh, a little bit of caution if you are with cold tires or very worn out tires. Sometimes on some cars you might have some power oversteer at the exit of this second part of the turn of the chicane, let's say. All right, down now. Now this, for the last turn, again, I usually brake way later than the 100 meters mark, and usually I take as a mark just before this starting line here. You see it's 50 meters, and there is a starting line here, just a tiny bit before that, more or less, depending again how's your fuel load, your tires consumption, and so on. The turn, I mean, you have to be a little bit careful to uh, not arrive way too fast. It's not a very hard turn, but if you arrive way too fast here, you're gonna end wide. But it's a turn that, tells you what to do, because if you cannot turn in, you already know that, okay, I need to touch my brakes a little bit to rotate the car, because I'm ending up wide here. But you still have the time to do it. It's not a turn that, okay, I've mistaken this, I cannot make the turn, I will end up wide. No, you can still work with the turn. It helps you. So yeah, it's an easy turn. Just take it correctly, and don't go too wide, because after the curb it's grass, and you don't want to end up to the grass. So do everything correctly, and you won't have a problem. Let's go a little bit forward and see turn one, which we didn't have the opportunity to check, because we started from the pits. All right. So again, 100 meters is way too early. So I end up usually braking a bit forward, just before this column here with the light. Yeah, before the 50 meters and before this light pole here. Um, it's important here to remember that you have a very long straight, the mountain straight, after the T1. So um, brake a tiny bit earlier, get the correct line here, okay, and try to accelerate already from here with the car properly rotated. If the car is not properly rotated, you're gonna end a bit wide, and you're gonna lose a lot of time going uphill. So rotate the car properly, go on the accelerator as soon as possible. No classic stuff, slow in, fast out. Very long straight. It is also uphill. Everybody behind you want to overtake, so this is one of those turns that they are easy on the basics, but you have to do it properly.